Yeah.
So first of all, I'd like to thank...
Okay, you can start.
Thank you for coming. I'd like to thank our sponsors today. Our sponsor, today's show is sponsored by Susan Jerkowitz to commemorate the yard side of Eugene Jerkowitz. It was yesterday. Yesterday was Yitzchak Elazar and Mordechai's yard side, the 7th year. So we do thank you, Susan. The Neshama Shaban Aliyah. Only Nachas indeed.
I already emailed them.
And okay, there's a different stender, so we're going to have to adjust it. We believe in prayer, right?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
We believe in prayer.
One sentence.
We better not say no.
Better not on a shul. Better not say no on a shul. Prayer, by the way, doesn't just belong to us as Jews. It belongs to humanity. Right? Everyone could turn to God. Moshe Feinstein notes that it's an integral part of faith. I believe there's a higher being. I believe that this higher being can change the course of things. It's important to believe in prayer. I mean, last week I heard on the radio that they interviewed a 10-year-old child from Chicago, and after the Cubs won, and he said, "I've been waiting for this for 108 years." That's what he said.
After what?
The Cubs.
Chicago Cubs, yes. So prayer is fundamental. However, for us, there is a structure.
Ivanka.
There is a structure. The core of our prayer is the Amidah, the Shmona Esrei, the 18 blessings. Only Jews can have a blessing that is called the 18 blessings that has 19. But it is a fundamental, it is the core of our prayer. And it is, as a Jew, when we talk about growth, it is important to be familiar with it, to know what the words mean, what the message is, what we are praying for. It is also very important to focus. Now there we have challenge, because the human mind travels. And I always mention that just as with, in back to baseball, a successful successful player in baseball, from what I understand, expert I'm not, is, let's say if he's batting 340. Is that good?
Very good.
Pretty good?
Very good.
So you realize, 340 is pretty good? So basically that means that 66% of the time,
He's a failure.
he's a failure. But nevertheless, he's a success. Now, therefore, I'm using that from player to prayer, that your Shmona Esrei, you have to, even if you don't succeed in focusing on all of the words, focus on the fact that some of them you're mindful of what you are saying. However, the first blessing is considered the most significant one. Because technically speaking, if a person was not mindful, did not have kavanah when he said the first blessing, technically speaking, it wasn't a successful tefillah. And according to the older tradition, you would actually repeat your tefillah. We don't do that anymore, because odds are that if we repeat it, we're not going to have kavanah in round 2 either. So that's why we don't. This is what we are told. But nevertheless, I think the message is that we should at least sit down at some point, look at the first blessing, and realize this is, for whatever reason, significant. It's a form of communication that is so much part of our identity. Now, the blessing itself is called avot, because we mentioned the avot. However, the ending, there are 2 words that really define. They're going to define this first blessing, which is the most significant one, which is the core of the Amidah, which is the core of our prayer, which is the core of our identity as ones who believe in a higher being. So those two words are extremely significant. Magen Avraham. Shield, God, you are the shield of Abraham. Good timing. Okay, now, the shield of Abraham. Now, what does that mean? And now, yeah, we all do that, right? the first person is the greatest reminder. So now, what is this idea of a shield of Abraham? So a shield means it protects us, right? You know about the Iron Dome. It shields us, right? So God is the shield of the people of Israel. Is that the whole meaning of this idea? Is there more to it? Is there a little bit more to it? That's basically it. You shield us. Obviously, there must be more to it than just the simple understanding, physical protection. There's more to it. And that's what we're going to try to figure out today. What exactly is the core idea of the Magen Avraham? But to understand it, we have to not just understand Avram, but we have to understand his nemesis. Right? I mean, lahavdil, you have in comic books, we have, believe it or not, Avram Avinu has a nemesis. Someone that stands against everything he believes in. Someone who has a mission to uproot this idea, this individual, in what he represents. There was someone. Not in the text itself, you're not going to find too many references to him. But the rabbis have an oral tradition that puts things together, that this individual, he is the one. He is trying to uproot the message of Avram. The world is a destructive place if there's an Avraham, according to Nimrod. Nimrod is the man. Now, where does this Nimrod? So we're gonna have to turn back to Parashat Noah. Parashat Noah. And there, we talk about on page 46, there's a fellow by the name of Cham who has a son called Cush, and in verse 8 on page 46, which is chapter 10, Perek Yud Pasuk Chet, we have Cush Yalad et Nimrod. Okay? And he was a gibor. He had mightiness, charisma, obviously, power, strength. He begins the process of bringing people together. However, he is considered a gibor tzayid lifnei Hashem. A gibor tzayid is considered a mighty hunter. Mighty hunter. It's a good name, right? For a store, for a hunting store, perhaps, I don't know. But the mighty hunter. But he is the mighty hunter in front of God, before God. Now, a mighty hunter could mean that everyone else was able to capture 7 elephants, and he would capture 17. Everyone else was able to capture throughout the day 12 squirrels and rabbits, and he went ahead and did 92. So, but before God, what is this idea of before God? A hunter before God? Anyone? Like, what can that mean? Now, and there was a saying after that. There was a saying that you are like Kenimrod, Gibor Tzayid. Again, Lifnei Hashem. Became a saying. And we talk here a little bit in verse 10 about his reign of power, Bavel, Erech, Akkad, Shinar. Fine, that's Nimrod. So what does it mean to be Lifnei Hashem? So the truth is, what is a hunter? What is a hunter? You ever have a situation that you are baited into something, and then you are caught in it? Let's say a phone plan, right? That they tell you all you got to pay for the first 12 months. Who is the internet? Who's the worst violator? They are all. Okay, that they give you this deal. First 12 months for your internet, you're only going to be paying $19 and unlimited downloads. Then the 13th month comes, and then suddenly it turns into $79, right? So basically, they are identifying your weakness. They are identifying the other person's weakness, the other person's need, and they're going to trap him. That's how it works. Credit cards do it. Right? Phone companies do it. This is what is done. The hunter, by the way, does the same. The animal has has a need. The animal needs lunch. The animal, the bird, is flying around and sees some tempting dead mouse in a trap, or it's perhaps whatever other creature. I'm not big into the hunting, as you could tell. And it sees this creature and it's attracted and it decides, I'm going for it. And the hunter walks away with the trapped animal. You are focusing on the weakness of the other for your personal benefit. That's a hunter. Okay? Now, the opposite of such behavior is a person who identifies the weakness of the other person to assist them. Right? What does it mean? A person has to be a rodef chesed. A person has to be, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that the person is supposed to be a maskil el dal. Right? There's a verse that if you are a maskil means you use your seichel, your brains. If you use your seichel towards the needs of the dal, of the poor person, so we are told, biyom ra'ah, when you have that challenging day, yimalteu Hashem, God is going to take care of you. What does it mean to be a maskil el dal? You use thinking. You think, what is the need of that other person? How can I help them? It's not so easy always, right? But you figure out their weakness, not for your personal gain, but rather you identify their weakness for them, to assist them. And that's the magnificence of Avram and Sarai, by the way. They invite people into their house when they need that meal. They need that meal. They are grateful. They are grateful, and Avram easily could have developed his power, right? He could have been this supreme leader without a question. And when they turn to him and they say, what can we do for you? How do we thank you? Don't thank me. Thank the God. And let me tell you a little bit about this God. He's not big into this avodah zarah. He really doesn't like this idea of offering children. He's not a big fan. Instead, he wants you to be ethical. He wants you to do tzedakah. He wants you to do chesed. That's Avraham Avinu. He finds the weakness in the other, just as Nimrod does. But for Nimrod, it is for the sake of power. For Avraham, it's for the sake of the other. So this is what Nimrod is, and he is the nemesis, and he wants and is willing to do anything to uproot this individual, to uproot the message of Avraham Avinu. Now, let's move on in Parshat Noach to page 48, which is the 11th chapter, which is the Babylonian tower, the Tower of Babel, and the dispersion. And the rabbis tell us that the charismatic individual who brings everyone together and says, let's build a tower, and we're going to go ahead and to avoid disbursement on the top of this tower, we're going to have a shem, a name. What does it mean, a name? Avodah Zarah. They had, led by Nimrod, they had the following agenda, and this is explained by the Sforno, a commentator that gives us true insight into what's taking place here. And he knows that Nimrod's desire is power. He knows that the only way you could go ahead and gain that power is find a cause and have everyone come around the cause. Everyone should be a supporter of the cause. He should be the carrier or with a banner of that cause, and that's how he will gain power. Nimrod says, let's build a tower, let's bring everyone together. And this will become the center of planet Earth. And we're going to have an Avodah Zarah, and we're going to all worship the same Shem as mentioned in the text, the same Avodah Zarah. But his intention is not that everyone should unify under an Avodah Zarah. His intention was that everyone unifies, and he is the one that has complete control over the human race. Many times when you have politicians, right, and they fight for a cause, their interest is not the cause. You know what their interest is? Mm-hmm. Power, right? When a candidate, right, running for the presidency of the United States of America, and I talked about prayer for a reason, right? When there's a candidate running for the presidency of the United States of America, and she'll get up, I'm not going to mention names, she's going to get up, and she's going to say, minimum wage, we're going to raise the minimum wage. Do you really think she wakes up in the morning with the millions she's made from speeches, right? And do you really think, perhaps, maybe, but I have a hard time believing that that's really what's disturbing her day in, day out. That the worker, right, that has no training, instead of working on some kind of system where they can earn more than that, I don't believe that that is really what is disturbing her. But what I do think is that you come with a cause. This is a cause. And when everyone goes ahead and says, this is a cause that indeed we identify, you give her the power. And the same could be said about another, right? When he gets up, right, and talks about, a wall that is needed, right? A wall, whatever it is. Politicians, quite often, their interest is not the cause, the interest is themselves, their power. And this is what's happening with Nimrod. And now, in that section that's talking about Nimrod, there's a furnace there, and we know very well that there was someone that was thrown into a furnace. Avraham Avinu. Note the commentators among them, the Netziv. This is the same furnace that is burning Avraham. The society that wants to give power to one individual, an individual who is at Sayyad, who is not thinking about the other, he is not concerned, and when he identifies the weakness of the other, he is doing it for his own power. Such an individual cannot live in a world where there is an Avraham Avinu. Because what is Avraham Avinu saying? The opposite. No, there's a weakness. Let's help the weak. Right? That's what we are about. Let's pray for their welfare, or when we could actually do something, do it for them. Nimrod is trying to uproot Avraham. Avraham at the time, that was his goal, that was his mission, and he threw him into a furnace. Miracle occurs, he survives, but Nimrod still has an eye on this. Avraham is a destructive individual because his agenda cannot and will not be fulfilled. So Nimrod returns. Nimrod returns in this week's parasha. And now, this week's parasha starts off with the journey of Avram and his trials down to Egypt. His trial with his relative Lot, and then on page 60, which on the surface seems to be a story that doesn't relate to his personal narrative, but it is all about his personal narrative. There is a battle. On page 60, we talk about kings. A list of kings are given, and they go to war. What happens during that war? They conquer the city of Sodom. They conquer the city of Sodom, and they take Lot. And the text makes it very, very clear that they take Lot, who was the nephew of Avram. So Avram is playing a role here. Avram is informed and goes to battle. However, let's at page 60 again. What is the first king, and who is the leader? And who has an agenda here that relates to Avram. Vayehi b'yamei. This is Amraphel. This is on page 60, verse 1 of chapter 14. Amraphel. Share with us the rabbis. Amraphel. You could break down the word into Amar Pol. He said, fall into this furnace. So who was he? Nimrod. And it makes sense. This is a person that is playing here a role, and this whole battle has one agenda. To deal with Avram. And we'll see soon how. So number one, it's Nimrod. But now, so page 62, to prove to you the idea that the text itself, on verse 12, tells us that they take Lot, Vayikhu et Lot, ve'et rechusho, and they take as well his possessions, who was Ben Achi Avram, the nephew of Avram. Vehu Yoshev B'Sdom, he was residing at the time in Sdom. Now, Avram is informed, and on page 64, he begins the verse 14 on page 62, Vayishma Avram, ki nishba achiv, he arms his disciples, and they go ahead and they begin the chase. And he wins. He is able to return Lot and the city of Sodom. A lot happening there as well. And at the end, the last verse of that chapter is that Avram doesn't want to take anything from Sodom. He knows very well that Sodom have their own issues, which are dealt with next week. And he doesn't want them to have any ownership over him because he is fighting their ideals and their values. And he says the only thing that will be taken will be by those who came with me. Last line on page 64. Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. Those are the ones who will take what they need. Fine. Now, you have to remember, Avram is teaching an ideal. He's teaching an ideal. These names, by the way, symbolize, if you remember, they symbolize his ideals. What were the ideals of Abraham? So number one, symbolically, he was a light upon the 70 nations. Avram understands that there were people in the past who recognized the higher being. None of them felt a responsibility to reach out and teach the world. And Avram succeeds, because if you look at monotheism, right, it is something that is spread throughout the world, when Avram Avinu is the first one that really recognizes not just the concept, but the responsibility you have towards others. And that's Jewish responsibility. So he recognizes that he's supposed to be a candle to the 70 nations. Ein, this numerical value of 70, Ner. That is symbolized by his first colleague, Aner. He recognizes that Judaism believes very much that we are supposed to appreciate the world. It's fundamental to be appreciative. When you go out, when I went out yesterday, and I see the leaves here changing, and I don't mean the leaves that don't change. They're changing too. That I heard that. So I'm talking about the golden yellow leaves that you see here. And you are in awe, right? And people think about traveling the world. Come to Ontario, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Kathleen wouldn't should pay me for this. So you look at the magnificence of this world. What is it there for? It's there for you to stop and say, this is an incredible Marabu Masech Hashem. There's a God, there's a creator. This is unreal. This is really magnificent. The colors of the October in this area and into November too as well. Magnificent. Where does this come from? This is a Jewish value of appreciation. And it's symbolized by the greatest pleasures of all, which is actually not coffee, but wine. The eshkol. Right? Wine, now you can misuse it, as we all know. Boy, can you misuse it. But when used correctly, that makes a person a person. Appreciate the world. And Avram was making that message very, very clear to the people he interacted with. Eshkol. Appreciate the product of the vine. Use it correctly. Use it not just as a libation by pouring it in a temple, but rather by pouring it, by drinking it and appreciating the Creator. However, so that's message number 2. Aner Eshkol. However, Judaism, you have to have that ability to be a rebel. You have to be a rebel. You cannot, in other words, all these rational things that we say about our Jewish tradition are very, very dangerous, because when you're rational, you are thinking like people think, and you are interacting with their thoughts. There are times you have to be a rebel in Judaism. That when people say, "Do this, you're crazy," what you're taking off in October, Monday, Tuesday, 3 out of 4 weeks from work, are you nuts? Right? Think about the doctors that have to go ahead and say, I can't show up Monday. You're not normal, right? You go, and then if one of your coworkers, right, comes into a shul and sees one of the men walking around with these branches, right? Can you explain that to them, right? You think, right? So you have to be a mamre. You have to be a little bit of a rebel, like not be so concerned. Balance it. I don't want my Judaism to turn into a rebellion. I don't want to develop a Judaism that nothing is rational, because it is rational, but there has to be a little bit of the irrational. By the way, when Avram Avinu comes time for the Brit Milah, and believe me, that is who of the 3 gave him the advice to go ahead and do it and not be concerned with anything. It was Mamre. You have to rebel. So these are these individuals are very, very significant. Fine. So we understand what is occurring here, but what does Amraphel really, really want? What does Amraphel, who is putting together, he's developing the strategy of capturing a relative of Avram and bringing Avram into the battle. What is he really trying to achieve? Because again, Amraphel, who is Nimrod, clearly has an agenda. He wants to uproot the person or the values of Avram. What is he trying to achieve? What is he trying to achieve by bringing Avram into the battle, which he does? And war is ugly, by the way. War is ugly. And Avram has to go to war. What is he trying to achieve? So now, let's turn to the verse of the next chapter, which is going to share with us what Avram is struggling with after this battle. And we will know suddenly what exactly is the agenda of this fellow, Nimrod. Achar hadvarim haele, after these events. Haya devar Hashem el Avram. God communicates, the word of God is to Avram in a vision, saying, Al tira Avram, fear not. Fear not. See this on page 66? Fear not, Avram. Anochi, you know what I'm going to be to you? Magen lach. I am your shield. Scharcha harbe mod, your reward is great. Al tira. Avram fears something. Avram fears. What does he fear exactly? What does he fear suddenly? So some will tell you, listen, after going to war, you lose friends. Right? He went ahead and he dealt with these city-states. They had an army. He defeated them. There's no question that he's going to have enemies to deal with. Right? Every victory brings after it conflict. So he fears conflict. How am I going to survive? How am I going to survive? I'm one person. I perhaps have a few colleagues, and I perhaps have a few alliances. How am I going to survive? God says, worry not, I'm your shield. And God indeed is saying that I'm the shield of Abraham, and I am the shield of his descendants as well. So this is a guarantee that God's giving, that he's going to be a shield over the people of Israel. Fine, that's one thing he feared. But he feared something else. And to understand what he feared, we have to understand the Nimrod plan. The Nimrod / Amraphel plan was to get the information to Avram that he has a relative that is captured. And for Avram, this was a catch-22. For Avram, he has relatives, right? Familia, family, that are in captivity. And the only way to release them is by rolling up his sleeves and going to battle. This is a catch-22, because whatever he does, he's going to have some sorrows, some difficulties. Let's say he decides, I'm not going to go ahead and go to war. You kill people in war. I'm a man of peace. The message. War is not a proper thing to do. I'm not going to. Fallen. Lot is chapt. He's captured. What can I do? So now suddenly, in that region, in those days or even today, if you are not loyal to your allies, you lose all respect. Where do I get this from? There's a book that we're reviewing this Friday night. And it's a book called Ally, right? And I'm sure Friday night we'll get into a discussion. Was it a good idea to review? Not good idea, already getting some hints from some people. But nevertheless, I enjoyed the book, right? And Ally was written by Michael Oren, who was the ambassador to the United States of America during the challenging Obama years. And it's a fascinating individual. And Michael Oren notes that when the United States, under President Obama, abandons Mubarak very, very fast because of a few protests in the streets, he loses his credibility by other Muslim countries, because he is basically saying, an alliance with me means absolutely nothing. I don't stand by friends. If you don't stand by your friends, so then who are you in the Arab world? And he is of the opinion, the author, that so too when it comes to the state of Israel, when the United States goes ahead and tells Israel to stop all building, even in areas that prior to Obama, the Palestinians accepted that Jews can't build in Giloh. Right? There was no big to-do by Jews building in Giloh in 2005, 2006, 2007, which is a suburb of Jerusalem, that is built. And everyone knows that even according to what they think, if there's going to be a quote-unquote a settlement, Gilo remains an integral part. Obama indicates that he is not loyal to an ally. He loses his respect among the Arabs. Because if you are not loyal to your ally, you're not a mensch, right? Mibsarcha al titalem. So now, if Avram Avinu, this is what Nimrod / Amraphel is trying to achieve. Put Avram in a position where he is going to be in a lose-lose, whatever he decides, he's a loser, right? Why? If he decides not to go to war, what's he good? With all his teachings about love and concern and doing for the other, and here the other is in difficulty, and look, he's scared, right? The big idealist, the fellow that jumped into a fire now that he's comfortable, right? Now that he's comfortable and he's wealthy, then now already he's no longer interested in his idealism. His idealism was only basically to gain power, right? Like in leaders in South America, right? Ideal revolutionists, they go ahead and actually will be giving their life at a young age, but once they're in power, he ain't doing anything for his relatives. So Abraham was in a difficult situation. What was the other option? Go to war. Go to war. Aha! So he goes to war. War is ugly. You kill people in war, right? And Nimrod, Amraphel, without a doubt, would go into an area, right, where there were innocent people, and most probably, there were the warriors of Nimrod, Amraphel, shooting at Avram's army from within a populated area, right, within a UN complex, and there were children there. And Avram had to shoot back, and there were probably a few casualties among the children. And Nimrod obviously was very, very close to CNN. And there is no question that they had footage. And Nimrod could say, Avram's a man of peace? You really think he is a man? You really think that he is the concern for the welfare of the human race? He's such an... Look what happened here, right? And he's going to present the mother who's going to talk about her 7 children, all killed by the arrows of Avram Avinu. War is ugly, right? There is no solution to war because war is always going to have casualties. Avram Avinu is going to lose his ideals, his teachings, his ability to communicate to the world values is going to be tainted by the negative press that is the byproduct of war. Avram is in a lose-lose situation. And how do I know that? Because he makes a decision and he realizes that there is a significant difference between a peacemaker and a pacifist. We believe in peace. Pacifism is not part of our Judaism. You have to defend yourself. He makes a decision. But after that decision, and after the war, and people died in that war, and he was concerned not just because he killed people, that people died, but he's concerned, how is my message? How can I carry on a message of what I believe in my values, when there are people that died, and this is presented to the world? He fears, and that is what is occurring here. He fears, and God says to him, Al Tira Avraham, fear not, you will still have the ability of having an impact despite this ugliness. You fear not. And he said, God said, the Midrash tells us that Avram is told by Hashem, the people you killed are like kotzim. They're like thorns. In other words, they are not the productive people. They are people that, sin brought about thorn, if you remember in Bereshit. These are people that are the byproduct of sin. It is not something you should worry about. And what he is really telling him is, you will still be able to communicate your messages to humanity even after a war. The Jewish people are protected, right? Avram is not just concerned about himself, he's concerned about us, that we have a message. We are carriers of the message of Avram Avinu. He is concerned that when we will go to war to defend ourselves, which we have to, our message, our ability to communicate values is going to be damaged. He is concerned about it. And God says, worry not. I am your shield. I will protect, not just you physically, will protect what you are trying to communicate, and wars are not going to destroy it. Negative press is not going to destroy it. CNN, MSNBC, or whatever, they're not going to have the success by showing those images that is not going to tamper, worry not. That is not going to occur. Now, it's interesting that here in Canada, in 2006, correct, when Stephen Harper becomes Prime Minister, and there's a war in Lebanon, he gets up, and supposedly he was on a flight to Europe at the time, and he says Israel actually has the right to defend itself. And the community is shocked. Like, where is this coming from? Or where is this coming from? A fellow from Alberta, from the West, with values and an understanding. And the Jewish community did a very good job in showing their appreciation towards him. I see it as a result of prayer. In other words, it's something not natural. It's a Magen Avraham, that a person can get up and say what he values of the Jewish people, right? He values what we represent, values our ideals, values what is our essence, and could have that maturity to overlook the hurtful, harmful pictures and still say the Jews have the right to do so. This is a result of a Magen Avraham. God is protecting us that we still have the ability of conveying our message. Now, Avraham Avinu, you have to remember, he's still a Jew. And afterwards, he still fears, right? War is ugly. Let's remember that. War is indeed ugly. Al tira Avram. And Hashem says to him, Anochi Magen Lach. So bottom line is, when you say Magen Avram next time, what are you going to be thinking? So number one, he protects us that we are in existence. The Jews are in existence. It's something incredible. We carry a message. These are the same messages of 3,700 years ago, and we are around. Why are we around? There is a God that shields us. And there's a guarantee, right? Not perhaps specific individuals, but there's a guarantee as a community. And if my life becomes a life that I want specific values to survive, there's a guarantee. But number two, even when we reach a state like in the 20th century where we have to do things that are going to be misused against us, and we could concern ourselves that perhaps the many, many Jews who are in media, the Thomas Friedmans, right, of the world, and others, and the Jeffrey Goldbergs, and we have a long list of individuals who don't understand what Judaism is about, right? People that go ahead and believe that they want to prove that they are more American than Jewish, and thus they want to achieve it by criticizing Israel. And they become the new voice of anti-Semitism in this generation. If we start concerning ourselves, how are we going to still achieve our mission as a nation? The answer is, worry not. Magen Avraham. He's not just protecting us, he's protecting the message will survive despite the attack. Now you have to remember what Avraham is teaching, and his message, it appears in many different ways in this parsha. In other words, when he is having, as we read on page 66, and he has an image, and the image itself has to do with the pact that he has with God. So in verse 68, we are told that the sun set. Okay? Verse 12 on page 68. Vayhi hashemesh lavo. Now, the shemesh, the sun, is mentioned earlier in Bereshit. But it was never called a shemesh. The shemesh itself was never called shemesh up until this point. It was called the Ma'or HaGadol, the great light. And suddenly it gets a new name here. It's called a shemesh. Why is it? In what way does Avram play a role in identifying it as a shemesh? The sun was worshipped. We know that. We've studied cultures. The sun was worshipped. It's a power. Comes in the morning. It's dark at night. You want to be sure there's sun tomorrow? You better shecht a few people, right? You better dance in a specific way. You better paint your face with the right markings, because if one of the markings is off, tomorrow morning the sun is not going to rise. But Avraham Avinu is teaching humanity this incredible power called the sun. It doesn't have its own powers. It is only there to serve the Almighty. It is a servant, a shamash. So Avraham Avinu says, remember, the name itself identifies what he is achieving. And the message is powerful because it survived. The message of Judaism. And that's what we are here, and that's indeed the Magen Avram. Obviously, there's a lot in this incredible parsha, but hopefully we gained a little bit of an understanding of the nemesis and the importance of knowing the gift that we have, the gift of prayer, the gift of relationship, and when indeed you say the Magin Avraham, be mindful of not just our survival, but the survival of our message. And it's a message, an incredible one, that we have towards humanity, and may we achieve it in its fullest way with the coming of Mashiach Me'er Yameinu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Susan. I was also to announce that Miriam is giving a class on Wednesday, November 23rd at 8 p.m. It's again Michtav Meliyahu. She gave one on Simchat Torah, and it was received well. So there will be a continuation on the 23rd of November. It's in the bulletin. A good day, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Susan, again.
Is it off? Anybody turn it off?